לאברהם בין לזקוניו, למועד אשר דיבר אותו אלוקים. Pregnancy and giving birth. Nachon, it's not one day after the other. But the conception, Chazal say, happened on when? Did you read a Chazal that said, when did she conceive? On Rosh Hashanah. Chazal say. And do you remember when, in and around Rosh Hashanah time, and when Chazal or sages say, when did Yitzchak, when was he born? Like around Rosh Chodesh Nisan times, like in the 7th month. And God has his reasons. Why then? Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance, is Rosh Hashanah. It's the name of, in the Torah, it's called, so God remembered him. Rachel also conceived that day. Chana of Shmuel, giving birth to Shmuel and Avi. All of these, the mothers of Israel, the Talmud says in one place, the woman conceived. It says though, Vatelet tzara la'Avraham bein. She gave birth to Avraham. Oh, thank you. What do you mean she gave birth to Avraham? Why is that necessary to emphasize?
Because the story later people complain that the situation with the king in Egypt, that maybe Yitzhak is not the son.
And in this case, maybe Yitzchak was conceived from Avimelech Melech Gerar. So the Torah wants to unequivocally emphasize Avraham. But to who? What type of Avraham? Lizkunav. In other words, on the outside, you could not see, this is some of the commentaries say, you cannot see any change in the physical makeup of this old man called Avraham Avinu. Whereas what did the Torah state? What modification, what change happened by Sarah? Something happened to her body. She received back her menstruation cycle. We stated that. In other words, the novelty here is that in spite that Avram is Zakein and nothing changes, we don't see. Whereas before the Torah did change, can God do this or not do this? Yes, God's going to have her naturally have a natural change in her body. So the birth is to Avram in spite of the fact that we don't see any change on the outside. When? La moed asher diber oto Elohim. There is a specific time. La moed asher diber oto Elohim. Now, what was the moed? Who told us the time, the appointed time? Do you remember? The Malach, exactly. The Malach said it. He's the one that said, Pasuk Gimel, verse 3 of chapter 21, Vayikra Avraham et Shem beno, hanolad lo, asher yalda lo, Sarah Yitzchak. How many hymns appear in this Pasuk? Et Shem beno, hanolad lo, asher yalda lo. Wow. Do you see how why is it brought so many times? So maybe like you said beforehand, Michael Aryeh, there are a lot of jokers, people mocking, poking fun, not believing in God, remaining in their philosophies of life. Comes the Torah to say, through prophecy from God to Moshe Rabbeinu writing this event, it's to Avram, it's to Avram, it's to Avram. He's the father. He's the father. Now, would you please tell me the order between Pasuk Gimel, verse 3, and Pasuk Daled? What is the order of events here, please?
It's reverse. Abraham named him before the brit.
Right. Do you all see that? Very good, Yosef. Vayikra Avram et Shem beno, the calling of the name. Whereas in Pasuk Daled, Vayamol Avram et Yitzchak beno, ben shmonat yamim. Isn't the tradition of the Jewish people to have the Kriyat Shem, the name calling, right after the making of the Brit Milah? Okay, I attended one 2 afternoons ago in Ranana, a grandson born to my first cousin, Mazal Tov. And I saw they did the Brit Milah, and then they filled the cup until it almost runneth over. And a man was honored with a talit on his back, and he recited some blessings. And then, and his name shall be called so-and-so, Yitzchak Lev, whatever the name, that was the name. So I saw it, I witnessed it. And you can see that in Shulchan Aruch probably as well. Now I understand. Avram didn't study the Shulchan Aruch yet. Could that be?
No.
So who will tell me the reason?
It was prophesied before him.
Very good. Avram didn't sit with his wife over a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. What would you like to call the baby? And Avram said, we don't have a choice. It was prophetically given. It was prophetically given. And now, what we want to talk about is this, the coming here of Yitzchak Avinu. Here, mankind will be able to continue because the focal point of mankind through the upcoming people of Israel is through Yitzchak Avinu. Okay? As we're going to learn about the competition, the difficulties growing up in a house, two children that are so different. But here, the soul of Yitzchak appears now in the body after so many years of waiting, after so many years of prayers. Wow, this is a baby of prayer, without a doubt. And if we ask ourselves, the name Yitzchak, what do we remember about the name Yitzchak? Yitzchak comes from the word tzechok, which is laughter. No, not the laughter that she was laughing when she didn't know angels were on the outside, on the other side of the tent. But right now, happiness is coming to the world. The world has a continuation. There's a great light of God that now comes into the world through Yitzchak, and people are happy laughter. Tzchok. Okay? And as King David writes in 105, Ushvuato, and his covenant, Yitzchak, from the word sechok, laughter. King David, 105, in his Ruach HaKodesh, writes a long paragraph, which good parts of it are copied by Ezra, the scribe, the great scholars that put our Siddur together. What is the opening of Psukei de Zimra that we recite in the morning? Hodu Lashem Kiru Vishmo Hodiu V'Amim Elotav. That's taken from Chronicles, Divrei Yamim. Almost verbatim, word for word, is a copy, Ezra Sofer, of what King David said. But there's one little difference. Okay? In King David, he says, Ushvuto li Yitzchak, and his covenant brought to Yitzchak sechok, happiness and laughter. Whereas Ezra, the scribe, which it's put in our Siddur, Ushvuto li Yitzchak, and God's covenant to him, Yitzchak with the tzaddik. A difference. But the point is here, one major meaning is happiness. The world is optimistic now. The world, there is a hereditar, an heir, the inheritance of the divine spirituality of Yitzchak. Another point I want to say is this. Some of you know that Yitzchak comes also from the word Yatsa Chok. Yitzchak, what came out is a Chok. When the word Chok appears both in Chazal and often in Tanakh literature, the Gemara in Masechet Beitzah explains that Chok means economics, a budget, provisions, welfare. What we call in Hebrew, Parnasa. Can you repeat that, sir? Parnasa. Lefarnes, to support someone economically. Okay? Parnasa, economic welfare. What does it have to do with Yitzchak? So we'll say here shortly, you've probably heard it from your great rabbis here. Each of the three avot, the patriarchs, although they excel, they were great tzaddikim and yesharim and chasidim, but each one excelled especially in a particular attribute. Some of you know, Avraham excelled especially in which midah, which attribute? Chesed. Yaakov was called Emet. Emet. I'm skipping Yitzchak, sir. Yaakov is Emet. Everything. He's the combination of the Chesed of Avraham. And now we'll say Yitzchak, on the one hand, is Pachad, fear, Yirah, awe of God. But this awe of God is because God has a divine supervision in the world. God is going to provide a chok, a law, statutes, limitations, parallels. In other words, through the birth of Yitzchak, and Yitzchak appearing in the world through the attribute of gvura, of great courage and fear and awe, he will demonstrate the manner that God brings economics to the world. God brings borders to the world. Okay? Give you an example. The famous words of Isaiah, Yeshayahu Nun Aleph. Habitu el tzur chatzavtchem. By the way, is that the haftarah for this coming Shabbat? No, it's Menachem, it's different. It's a different haftarah. Look or view. Where do we have that big Tanakh? No, not here. Look at the rock from which you were hewn out. Habitu. Look and view. The rock we're going to learn is the patriarchs. Habitu el tzur chutzavchem. Look at the rock from which you were hewn out from the stone. Vel makevet bor nukartem. And look at the hole, or from the pit, from which you were dug out. What anecdote is the prophet relating Yeshayahu to us here in chapter 51? What is the meaning of this metaphor? Let's just say Hananel is thirsty. Okay? When Hananel is thirsty, and he doesn't have plumbing here, we're living in the outskirts of India somewhere in the villages, he takes a vessel and he starts digging and digging and digging. And he digs a pit, and wow, he happens to find water. What is the wonder? That exactly where he was digging is where he found the water. And then there's no wonder to take the water out of that place because he found it. What about a person taking an axe or a very metal instrument, and he starts knocking to take the stone out of this big mountain, the stone out of the mountain. And you know what? He extracts water from it. Stone? Water? Water, something dry. That's a wonder. This was the birth of Yitzchak from Avram, who was dry. He remained as a Cain. Like we mentioned before, there seemed to be no modification, no change in his physical status. Like an old man. Okay? He was like a big rock that you're hewing the stone out of that big rock. And at that time of the birth, or conception and birth, he was dry as a rock. But in any event, Avraham Avinu was able to help his wife conceive. That's not the case of Sarah. What did we say? She went back to her younger days. Her menstruation period came back. Okay? She was like a pit that you already dug out the dirt and there's water coming out of there. Sarah is like that second part of the pasuk. She's able to conceive, and indeed Sarah conceives. She's ready to contain the seed of blessing. The dirt was dug out of the pit. That's what Sarah is like. View this. The prophet says, habitu, view, understand, contemplate. Okay? There's benefit in understanding the entire situation. For us, we can extract a musar, a lesson for ourselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Yitzchak to be a miracle boy, a miraculous boy. So too, when God provides economically for us, there's metaphysical laws about economic provisions, meaning the influence you have in Torah life, Torah, tefillah, that will bring about success in finding parnasah. You would ask, what does Torah and mitzvot have to do with material blessing? You're right, it's a miracle. That's the coming of Yitzhak from someone like Avraham Avinu. Okay? Do you remember when we learn about the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year in Vayikra chapter 25? The Torah says, someone might come and ask, what are we going to eat? We're not sowing. Okay? What does God say? If you keep on doing the Torah and mitzvot, what's going to happen in your 6th year? What's going to happen to the yield, the harvest in the 6th year?
You'll still have.
It'll provide for you
3 years.
6th year, the 7th year, until you sow in the 8th year. Okay? We're not really talking about revealed open miracles, but rather the influence of Torah and serving God. Okay? According to our actions is the hidden miracle. This is, Sarah was healed, and now Avraham Avinu, who's dry like a rock, he will help her give birth. That's laughter here. That is the happiness here. We have a God. We have divine provisions here in this world. And therefore, the name Yitzchak carries 2 names. Happiness, the future of the world will continue. Yet at the same time, Yitzchak Avinu will represent prayer, represent economic provisions. Okay? He will provide parnasah. Yitzchak will be that part of the world that's doing the service of the temple. And from the service of the temple, what comes down from heaven? Parnasah. There's a pipeline. Invisible. Affluence, blessing. I mentioned it to some of you yesterday. I think I'll mention it again. I heard from Rav Kashtiel Yeshua, Rabbi Kashtiel from the Yeshuva of Eli, that the word bracha, which is blessing, which is abundance. What a bracha, what affluence. In God's world, it is the more you give, the more you get. The more you give out, the more you get back. Just the opposite of what Western thought is about. And that's what Yitzchak Avinu is. The more he prays, the more he serves God, there's more receiving from Hashem. The more someone gives charity, for instance, God takes care of him. Do you remember the famous tithe called the second tithe, Ma'aser Sheni, as it appears in the book of Dvarim? The Torah duplicates the word and says, Aser te'aser. It called Tvuat Zarecha. Surely shall you take out an Eser. What is Eser? How much is Eser? A tenth. And what does the Talmud say? Take out a tenth. Aser te'aser. Aser te'asher. Take out a tenth and you become wealthy. Huh? Yes. The more you give,
The more you receive.
that's Hashem's world. I said it to my daughter when I was going from the Brit Milah Ranan. I went to Petach Tikva to learn with one of my grandsons, Chavruta. We have a tradition in my wife's family that the grandpa learns with the grandson a Masechet, a tractate of Gemara for the year of the Bar Mitzvah to finish an achievement. So I went to already learn with him. And my daughter was nursing the 4-month-old baby. And I said to what I heard from Rav, I never thought about it. We're going to see it here. Once a woman gives birth, her hormonal situation changes, and her bosom is filled with milk, just like that. And the more the baby nurses and drinks milk, the more milk the mother has. You would think just the opposite. The more he's milking me out of here, she's going to say, hey, he's taking all the milk. No, it's not true. This is God's physics. The metaphysical world appears as well in the physical world, that the more a woman breastfeeds an infant, the more milk she has. Isn't that amazing? That's part of God's laws here. So, Avraham Avinu performs, we're back in verse 4. Avraham Avinu performs the Brit Milah, Ben Shmonat Yamim. This is already one of the mitzvot he receives. He did already how many years ago?
10 years. Oh, wow. 20.
When did Avraham Avinu do a Brit Milah for himself and for his household?
Shmonim.
He was Shmonim?
86.
75.
99.
Everyone turned to the end of Parashat Lech Lecha. See it again. We saw it. You're right. So it says here, Vavram ben Tishim Vatesha Shana was 99 years old. So this is 1 year ago. He performed Brit Milah for Yilidei Beito, the ones born to his home. Yishmael was 13 years old. And now Yishmael is 1 year later, 14 years old. So 1 year has elapsed from the end of Lech Lecha. And therefore the Torah says in verse 5, V'Avram ben me'at shana. Avram is 100 years old. Pihivalelo et Yitzchak beno. That's a great miracle. Okay? One more point.
Mem Yud.
You don't need a yud.
Mem Yud.
You don't need a yud.
Yeah.
Mem,
Hey.
hey,
Hey.
mohel.
Yud. Lamed.
Mohel. Mem, hey, lamed.
Ah.
So it's enough. Mem, hey, lamed. Maybe mem, vav, mo with the o. But that's an incorrect answer.
Father.
It's the Abba. Incumbent on the Abba to do the mitzvah of the milah. So I saw this mohel 2 days ago when I went to that Brit. He said outwardly, don't think it's my mitzvah, it's yours. Do you want to appoint me to be your shaliach? And the father said, yes, you do it, please. He said, you do it. So that is the mitzvah on the father. Now, we're happy it's raining. Now, the fact is, who did the milah? Isn't it simple that he's doing it?
You know the others.
Unless the father does it.
So why do we need the Torah to tell me that he did it? I think we have a simple answer according to what we've been saying consecutively. Avram Avinu is 100 years old. You might have, this Forno says this answer. You might have thought
It's too old.
Says somebody.
he would appoint someone to do it.
Somebody else.
No. Vayamol Avraham. It was Avraham that did the milah. In spite of the 100 years old, he didn't ask anyone to perform it for him. Again, the Torah says now in verse 5, V'Avram ben me'at shana bivaled lo. The baby again is born to him. The Torah continues to say that he's the father. Don't listen to media, YouTube, Messenger, I don't know what these things are called. All these social media people, they're saying, no, this baby was born to Avimelech, like Michal said 15 minutes ago. No. Yitzchak beno, it's his son. It doesn't belong to anyone. Okay? And now, gentlemen, let's continue seeing this matter. Pasuk Vav. Vatomer Sarah, she now expresses herself in a very special way. What does she say? Tzchok asali Elohim kol hashomea yitzchak li. My dear friends, laughter. Laughter, of course, of joy. Astonishment, Rashbam says. Remember how painful it could be for a mother, decades upon decades, prayers after prayers, righteousness after righteousness, and saintliness and prophecies. And now it happens. Wow, it's like overwhelming. And she accounts it to Hashem. Tzchok, happiness, asali, Elohim. I deserve it. She doesn't say that. God did it to me. It's like hitpatlut, like submission. And kol hashomea yitzchak li. Do you know my neighbors? For this decade, my neighbors where we still live in the old neighborhood. I would always see them walking with the stroller on the street. And I would never walk with a carriage or a stroller. And I'm looking at their expressions on their face without saying a word. I know what they're thinking. What are they thinking?
Yeah.
Poor Sarah. She doesn't have a child. How many times would she see a woman with a stroller? Every day. Every woman. And I'm not. Kol hashomea, anyone that hears, finds out, are going to be laughing with me, are going to be what? Happy with me. And I just want to shortly take upon this Rashi. In verse 6, Rashi brings a Midrash Agadah from the book Bereshit Rabbah. Harbe akarot nifkedu ima. Many barren women were remembered, were opened up when she also conceived. Harbe cholim nitrapu bo bayom. Many ill people became healed on that day. Harbe tfilot na'anu ima. Many prayers were answered with her prayer. Verov schok haya ba'olam. What Rashi brings or decides to bring this particular midrash, he's painting a picture what's happening in the world. When the heart is healthy, when the heart sends blood out to all parts of the body, there's spiritual, physical health to the world. Avram and Sarah are the core, the nucleus, the center, the heart of the world. When they're healthy, there's health in the world. There's happiness in the world. There are happy occasions. This goes to prove how the Torah of the upcoming people of Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu, for the people of them, Nachon, it's applicable to us. And it's not discriminatory. It's God's choice. But the more we're clinging on to Torah and mitzvot, the more good things happen not only to us, but to the world. And therefore, there are nations, both in Europe and North America, that are watching the war today, putting their eye. They realize how cruel, how vulgar, how animalistic Islamic people can be. They're not people. And they're standing up and supporting Israel. Many, many nations that before would not support us. And to the amount of support from the US, for instance. Why? Because only a nation that has true values of kindness, of love, of faith, of benevolence, of justice can fight a war against this wickedness, this evil, this darkness. No one else can do it. And they're supporting us. And the soldiers realize this, and therefore they have so much morale. And there are times when we fall and we have losses, like last night when 7 soldiers of Special Forces of Givati were hit.
It was 9.
Now 9. It was 7 plus 2 separate incidents.
I think so.
It's a tough time. Yet we know that we have to go on. And it's a war of the nation. And in the war of the nation, sometimes we have losses in individuals. And each individual is a world in of himself. Each individual is a holy being and is right now going upstairs to heaven, sitting by Rabbi Akiva, his soul, next to the holiest of all Jewish people, martyrs of Israel. And we're going to continue learning for their behalf. The next 2 psukim, and with this we'll end this subject. Vatomer, she says in Pasuk Zayin, Mi milel Avram. Who would have thought? Who would have understood that for someone like Avram, Heinika Vanim Sarah. What's going on here? There are people in society that are pointing a finger. Ma pitam. She's been with Avram for decades and never had a child. She was one night with Avimelech, that's the child. Heinika Vanim Sarah. Bring them over. Bring your kids, bring your babies over. Why? I'm going to milk them. I'm going to nurse them. Huh? Only a woman that gave birth has the hormonal changes, like we said before, and can provide nursing services. But a woman that didn't give birth, she can't put on an act. She can't have a pipeline with a pint of milk or a liter of milk, and fool everyone, spritz milk into the baby's mouth. No. She started, according to this understanding, Chazal saying, milking babies, infants in the area, in the neighborhood. People started bringing from distances. And what does it prove? That she gave birth. But she gave birth to Avraham Avinu. La Avraham. Ki aladeti vein liskunav, even though that he was old. Gentlemen, the party continues. The baby is weaned. Vayigdal hayeled vayigamal. Okay, we see the word vayigmo. We saw vayigmo shkedim in the, if you remember the eruption of Korach, like in the book of Bamidbar regarding trees. Okay, fruits of nourished trees, that if nourished fruits and the roots are the fruits are ripe, so too a child is weaned. Maybe that's the reason Rav Shimshon Father says, why is a camel in Hebrew called a gamal, from this word? Why is he called? Because he can go such a long time after drinking. Some say months, weeks, hundreds of kilometers of traveling. So right now, Rashi does say though that it's 2 years, 2 years of nursing, and this answers the question. A mishteh gadol. They draw a big party. The future of Israel, the values of God. So they make a mishteh gadol, a big party. Rashi says the giants of the generation, Shem and Aver, and even Avimelech, who's a power in southwestern Israel, are called to the area. And some even say, the Radak says, that could be a custom, that during that time, when a baby stops nursing, he begins to speak. And they all come here to see, what is he speaking? What is this special child about? And that ends today's shur, the coming of the light of the Jewish people in the future through Yitzchak. Thank you very much.